This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today's our topic is surgical site infections and antibiotic prophylaxis. So coming to what is surgical site infection. So these are the infections of the tissues, organs or the spaces exposed by surgeons during performance of an invasive procedure. So again, these surgical site infections are classified into superficial incisional surgical site infections and deep incisional surgical site infections and organ or space surgical site infections. So this is the diagrammatic representation of the different types of surgical site infections. So first is the superficial incisional surgical site incisions. So which includes the skin and involvement of the skin and the subcutaneous tissue. Whereas deep incisional surgical site infections involve the, along with skin, subcutaneous tissue, deep soft tissue, either it may be fascia or muscle. Again, third type of classification is organ or space surgical site infection. These include the internal organs of the body. So coming to the superficial incisional surgical site infection. So infection less than 30 days after surgery, which involves the skin and subcutaneous tissue only, and one of the following. It should be purulent discharge. Diagnosis of superficial surgical site infection by a surgeon, and symptoms of other inflammatory signs like erythema, pain, and localized edema will be there. So when they come to deep incisional surgical site infection, it is also period is less than 30 days after surgery with no implants or soft tissue involvement, and infection less than 1 year after surgery with them. So there is two criteria. One is the duration after the surgery, whether it is less than 30 days with no implants and soft tissue involvement. Other is infection less than 1 year after surgery with an implant which involves the deep soft tissues, either fascia or muscle. Plus one of the following should be there. So what are those things? Those are the purulent drainage from the deep space, but there won't be any extension into the organs or the organic space. Next one is the abscess which is found in the deep space. A diagnosis of a deep space surgical site infection by the operated surgeon itself, and symptoms of fever, pain, and tenderness leading to the wound dehiscence or opening by a surgeon to let out the purulent drainage. So what is organ space surgical site infections? So again it is basically classified depending upon the duration from the time of surgery. So it is also again one point is less than 30 days after surgery with no implant. Infection less than 1 year after surgery with again implant, and infection which involves any part of the operation opened or manipulated. Plus should include the following. What are those points? Again, purulent discharge from a drain placed in the organ space, or cultured organisms from the material aspirated from the organ space. For example, in a case of any ruptured appendicular appendicitis or appendicular abscess formation, whenever you open the peritoneal cavity, first thing you have to do is you should aspirate the abscess or any infected fluid from the peritoneal cavity. Then only you should go into the further step. So the sample should be sent for culture, that is gram stain for mainly gram positive organisms. So any abscess found on direct or radiological examination or during reoperation, that is in severe cases, you should reopen the surgical site to express the purulent drainage or purulent discharge or collection. So diagnosis of organ space infection by a surgeon. So what are the major and minor surgical site infections? So how will you classify as major and minor? First one is coming to the major, significant depending upon the quantity of the discharge. So discharge should be significant. Next one is the delayed return home. So patients are systematically ill patients. So minor are the minor wound infections may discharge pus or any infected serous fluid also, not associated with excessive discomfort or systemic signs or delay in return home. So these are the diagrams with first one is showing the major wound infection. So there is a dehiscence of the wound. Wherein other picture, which is the classical example of a minor wound infection, only the skin is infected. So what is the classification of wound infection according to the etiology? So coming to the first, primary infection, where the wound is the primary site of infection. So secondary infection, which arises following a complication that is not directly related to the wound, that is called a secondary infection. So depending upon the early duration, that is early infection, intermediate infection and late infection. So what is early infection? So presence within 30 days of a surgical procedure is called as early, whereas intermediate infection between the 1 to 3 months, whereas late infection occurs in more than 3 months after surgery. So surgical wounds are classified based on the presumed magnitude of the bacterial load at the time of surgery. So depending on this criteria, the wounds are classified into class 1, which includes the clean wounds, class 2, which includes the clean contaminated wound. Next one is the contaminated wound, which includes the class 3. So class 4 contains the dirty wounds. So coming to the class 1 type of wounds, these are the clean wounds. So what are the clean wounds? Clean wounds include those in which no infection is present. Only skin microflora potentially contaminate the wound, and no hollow viscous that contains microbes is entered. That is the clean wounds. Example is the inguinal hernias. Classical example. Next is the clean contaminated wound, that is a class 2. So that is the bacterial flora is opened under controlled circumstances without significant spillage, that is important, without significant spillage of contents. So include those in which a hollow viscous such as the respiratory tract or alimentary tract or genitourinary tracts with indigenous bacterial flora is opened under controlled circumstances without significant spillage of contents. Example is cholecystectomy. So class 3 is the contaminated wounds, that is which includes the open accidental wounds encountered early after injury or those with extensive introduction of bacteria into a normally sterile area of the body due to major breaks in sterile technique, that is for example open cardiac massage, and gross spillage of viscous content such as from the intestine. So what are the dirty wounds? So dirty wounds are the class 4, which includes the traumatic wounds in which a significant delay in treatment has occurred and in which necrotic tissue is present or devitalized tissue, those created in the presence of overt infection as evidenced by the presence of purulent material, and those created to access a perforated viscous accompanied by a high degree of contamination. So these are the classical examples of the class 1, class 2, class 3 and class 4. So first come on the clean wounds. For example, best example is the hernia or breast biopsy, like that. So what are the expected rates of infection in these first class wounds? So only 1 to 2%. Whereas second is the clean or contaminated wound. So again, clean or contaminated class 2 example is cholecystectomy, elective gastrointestinal surgeries, not except colon. So what is the infection rate expected is 2.1 to 9.5%. Another one is the colorectal surgery. So because colorectal surgery, so there will be a spillage of the content. So there is a more chance, that is 4 to 14%. There is chance of infection rates. So class 3 is contaminated wounds. For example, penetrating abdominal trauma or large tissue injury or enterotomies during bowel obstructions or any tumor growth. So all this comes under class 3. So the expected rate of infection is 3.4 to 13.2%. So as the class grade increases, there is a increased expected infection rates. So 30 is the best example is the perforated, any diverticulitis or necrotizing soft tissue infections, like that. So here is 3.1 to 12.8%. So we have two scoring systems. So systems for the severity of the wound infection. First one is the Southampton and second one is the asepsis system. So just have a look at what are those scoring systems. So we will give a grade according to the appearance of the surrounding area of the wound. So if you give the 0 grade for the normal healing, whereas 1 for the normal healing with mild bruising or the erythema. So 1A is the some degree of bruising will be there, whereas 1B is considerable bruising, so moderate bruising will be there, whereas 1C is the only mild erythema. So 2 includes the erythema plus other signs of inflammation. So 2A is, we will have only these signs of inflammation at only one point, whereas 2B is around sutures, whereas 2C is along the wound, whereas 2D is around the wound. So 3 includes the clear or hemoserous discharge. So discharge. 3A is at one point only, it is less than or equal to 2 centimeters. If at all it is along the wound and it is more than 2 centimeters, it comes under 3B. Whereas 3C is a large volume of discharge. Whereas 3D is, it includes the duration also. So prolonged discharge, that is more than 3 days. So this grading system includes the major complications under fourth grade. So 4 includes the purulent discharge, whereas 4A is purulent discharge at 1 point only, it is less than or equal to 2 centimeters. Whereas 4B is along the wound more than 2 centimeters. So in third grade, it is only the clear or some mixture of blood and serous discharge will be there. Whereas in fourth grade, there will be a purulent discharge. So where is the 5? 5 is the deep or severe wound infection with or without tissue breakdown. So if at all there is a hematoma, then you should reopen the wound and you should, that is also depend upon the size of the hematoma. If size of the hematoma is small, then we can do simply the aspiration. Otherwise, if at all hematoma is organized, then we have to go for exploration. So other criteria is the asepsis wound score. So asepsis wound scored for 5 of the first 7 days only, because the remainder being scored if present in the first 2 months. So what is the criteria? So we should give the points according to the any additional treatment other than those pus drainage or like that. So first is the antibiotics for the wound infection. We will give the 10 points for antibiotics, and drainage of pus under local anesthesia 5. Whereas the debridement, that is along with the drainage of the pus, devitalized tissue is removed. So debridement of wound under general anesthesia gives the 10 points. Whereas serious discharge, daily serious day for 0 to 5, erythema 0 to 5, purulent exudate is 0 to 10, and separation of deep tissues 0 to 10, whereas isolation of bacteria from wound. So how will you isolate the bacteria from wound? So daily we will do the aseptic dressing. So before, with sterile gloves, before after removing the dressings, we have to send it for bacterial growth, that is culture. So stay as inpatient prolonged over 14 days as a result of wound infection. First, for this criteria, we will give 5 points. So what are the risk factors for the development of surgical site infections? So these again classified into, first we come to the patient factors. So what are the patient factors? First one is the older age. So as the age advances, the healing process will be reduced. Second one is the immunosuppression. So whether the patient is on any other immunosuppressant therapy like steroids, or any immunosuppressive condition like diabetes mellitus, or any obesity, chronic inflammatory processes, the bowel, chronic inflammatory bowel diseases, like any inflammatory diseases. The other important point is the malnourished, so malnutrition and smoking. All these are the patient. And also renal failure patients or peripheral vascular diseases, anemia, radiation, chronic skin diseases, and carrier state. For example, chronic staphylococcus carriers, and recent any operation, because operation itself, it is a stress to the body. So what are the local factors? So what are the local factors? So this is a comparison between the open compared to the laparoscopic surgery, or poor skin preparation before surgery, or contamination of the instruments if I use it for surgical procedures, or inadequate antibiotic prophylaxis, prolonged procedures, local tissue necrosis. So where we will get the local tissue necrosis? So by closing the tissues, if you should not, it should be not too tight, not too loose. If you tie the sutures tightly, then there will be a tissue necrosis. So same blood transfusions, hypoxia and hypothermia. So what are the microbial factors? So prolonged hospitalization, which leads to nosocomial infections, and toxin resistance to clearance, for example, capsulated organisms. So microorganisms are normally prevented from causing infection in tissues by epithelial surfaces and skin. So what are the chemical factors? So low gastric pH. Second one is the humoral, that is the antibody formation, complement and opsonins. Cellular level, they can be phagocytotic cells, macrophages, polymorphonuclear cells, and killer lymphocytes. So all this prevents the infections. So factors that determine whether a wound will become infected or not. So these depends upon the mainly the host response. So the immunity of that patient. Next one is the virulence and inoculum of the infective agent. Then next is the vascularity and health of tissues being invaded. So you should always, so if you, for example, if you are doing any breast benign lumps, so what is the main important thing is you should preserve the vascular structures, that is any blood vessels surrounding the fibroadenoma. So you should mainly preserve the vascularity of that tissue. Presence of dead or foreign tissues and presence of antibiotics during the decisive period. So what is decisive period? So decisive period. So usually decisive period is a 4-hour interval before the bacterial growth becomes established enough to cause an infection after a breach in the tissue. So this time period is called as decisive period. So whether caused by trauma or surgery. So this interval is called as decisive period. So that only before, so before induction of anesthesia, you should give the first dose of antibiotic because of this decisive period only. So preventing infection from taking a hold become ineffective after this time period. So it is therefore logical that prophylactic antibiotics should be given to cover this period, decisive period, and that they could be decisive in preventing an infection from developing and before the bacterial growth attacks the hold. So what is colonization and what is contamination? So there is a difference between these two terms. So what is colonization? So bacteria present in a wound with no signs or the symptoms of systemic inflammation is called as colonization. So only the presence of bacteria. So there won't be any effect of by that bacteria. Whereas contamination is transient exposure of a wound to bacteria, that is usually less than the 6 hours, is called as contamination with varying concentration of the depending upon the load of the bacteria. So superficial and deep surgical site infections are accompanied by the as all you know, inflammatory signs like erythema, tenderness, edema, and occasionally discharge, that is a collection. So the wound is often soft or fluctuant at the site of infection. So patient may have, so how they present is only one thing, all these inflammatory signs will be there surrounding the wound or suture material. Next, the wound is, and next one is the dehiscence of the wound can be there, huge collection will be there. So before that we have to go for complete blood picture to know the what is the type of infection. So ultimately the patient will have the leukocytosis and the already you know any kind of abscess, whether it is mild or moderate, first thing the patient present is the fever. So according to the Joint Commission, a surgical wound is considered infected. So these are the factors where you will say accurately that this wound is infected. So grossly purulent material drains from the wound. This is the first thing. Second one is that the wound spontaneously opens and drains the purulent fluid because it will have because it will have its own capacity. So as the purulent material gets collected, it ultimately the wound gives way. So the wound spontaneously opens and drains all the collected purulent fluid. So the wound drains fluid, that is, it should be culture positive or gram strain positive for bacteria. So the surgeon notes erythema or drainage and opens the wound after determining it will be infected. So then what is the way to prevent the surgical site infections? So risk factors. So smoking, because heavy smokers are encouraged to stop the smoking at least 2 weeks before the surgery. So next one is the glucose levels in patients with diabetes must be treated appropriately. And severely malnourished patients should be given the nutritional supplements till the optimal nutrition is achieved. So next risk factor is the obesity. So obese patient must be encouraged to lose some weight if the procedure is elective. So however, if the procedure is emergency, so we won't wait now. So for if at all it is a elective cases, for a best example is the umbilical hernias. So obese patients comes to you with umbilical hernia. So depending upon the what is the size of the defect, what are the contents of the defect. So depending, so seeing all these things, if patient is too obese, first you should advise the patient to lose some weight. If at all it is a case of any obstructed hernia, then you can go for emergency laparotomy. Otherwise, definitely you should encourage the patient to lose some weight. So the procedure is, and if there is some time to achieve the significant weight loss. So patients who are taking high doses of corticosteroids, they will have the lower infection rates if they are weaned off, or otherwise we can taper the steroid doses. So other important technique is the hair is removed by clipping immediately before the surgery, and the skin is prepared at the time of operation. Why hair is removed only by clipping immediately before surgery? Why not with razor or shaving? Because shaving or razor, by using razor hair removal, will have a minor abrasions, so there will be more chance of infections. So and the skin is prepared at the time of operation with an antiseptic agent. Best example is alcohol or chlorhexidine or iodine. So coming to the antibiotic prophylaxis. So what is the kind of antibiotic you should use? When to be used? So peri-operative antibiotics are widely used. So prophylaxis is generally recommended for clean contaminated, that is class 2, or contaminated processes in which the risk of surgical, that is class 2 and class 3, risk of surgical site infections is high, or in processes in which vascular or orthopedic processes are used. So for dirty or contaminated wounds, the use of antibiotics is for only the therapeutic purpose rather than for prophylaxis. So we cannot prevent in those conditions, no, because already it is a dirty or contaminated wounds. So preoperative antibiotic prophylaxis is proved to reduce the risk of postoperative surgical site infections. So if not administered properly, antibiotic prophylaxis is ineffective and may be harmful. So first thing you should keep in mind is the decisive period. So if that does not given according to the decisive period, then the use of that antibiotic is not that much, no. So depending on the disease of period only, we are giving the antibiotic, that is first dose of antibiotic. So you should give the first dose of antibiotic before induction of the anesthesia. So and does not prevent the post-operative nosocomial infections. Instead, it increases the risk of nosocomial infection in prolonged prophylaxis. So antibiotics with short half-life, that is less than 2 hours, should be redosed every 3 to 4 hours during the surgery. If surgery is prolonged or there is an increased blood loss. So antibiotics should not be given to cover the drains or catheters in lavage or irrigation fluid or a substitute for poor surgical technique. So what are the principles for administration of antibiotics for the prophylaxis? So an appropriate narrow spectrum with coverage of relevant pathogens. And another one is the favoring resistant bacteria with heavy doses. And administration within 1 hour before surgery, not longer than 24 hours or 48 hours, especially those for cardiac surgeries, ideally single dose. They will give only the single dose. So most surgical site infections are caused by gram-positive cocci. So first thing is you should give the antibiotic against the gram-positive cocci. So what are those antibiotics? First one is the first generation cephalosporins. So these are preferred in almost all circumstances, whereas clindamycin in a penicillin allergic patients. So gram negative or anaerobic, because purulent means most commonly these are the gram negative and anaerobic infection. So you should also give the coverage for gram negative and anaerobic also. So these may require second generation cephalosporins or the combination of a first generation, second generation along with the metronidazole. Actually for gram negative, so now not theoretically, practically what we are giving is the aminoglycosides, that is amikacin, gentamicin. So all those things we will give to cover the gram negative organisms. So what is MRSA? Methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So most Staph aureus strains are beta lactamase producers. So these are resistant to penicillin. So more than 20% of all surgical site infections caused by methicillin resistant Staph aureus. So short preoperative hospital stay lowers the risk of acquiring the MRSA. Then patients are recommended to take the bath with antiseptic, that is chlorhexidines, to prevent the MRSA. So best prophylaxis is the vancomycin is generally appropriate only in the institutions in which there is a high incidence of MRSA infections. So other one is the hospital acquired infections, and majority of wound infections arise from the endogenous sources within the patient, but exogenous surgical site infections may also occur from bacteria present in the ward. So ward cleanliness, gloving before each and every patient, the touching each and every patient wounds, and hand washing between examination of patients. So patients are discharged more quickly after surgery, and many procedures are performed as day cases only to prevent the hospital acquired infections. So the staff with open or any infected skin lesion should not enter the operating theatre. So all these are the prophylaxis and prevention of the superficial surgical site infections. So here is a table, what is the prophylactic use of antibiotics used in various surgical procedures, commonly used. So in cardiovascular surgeries, so cefazolin and cephalosporin, ceftriaxone and cefazolin. If they are penicillin allergic to penicillin, then we will go for vancomycin and the clindamycin. So gastroduodenal, that is upper GI. So gastroduodenal area, small intestine and non-obstructed cases, cefazolin. Whereas resistive cases, penicillin allergic cases, clindamycin or vancomycin along with the aminoglycoside or aztreonam or fluoroquinolones. So again, fluoroquinolones are the broad spectrum antibiotics. So that are the what are the fluoroquinolones? These are the ciprofloxacin and ofloxacin. So all those things, norfloxacin, all those things are the fluoroquinolones. So in olden days for typhoid, all those things they used to give the patients only these broad spectrum antibiotics. So biliary tract in open processes and laparoscopic also they will give cefazolin, that is the fourth generation. Cefazolin, cefoxitin, cefoteton, ceftriaxone, ampicillin, sulbactam combination. So penicillin allergic or clindamycin or vancomycin along with the amino same as above. But another one coverage is the anaerobic coverage, that is the metronidazole, or another alternative is metronidazole plus aminoglycoside or fluoroquinolones. So the laparoscopic low risk cases, there is no need of antibiotic prophylaxis. So appendectomy and uncomplicated, that is uncomplicated simple appendectomy. So cephalosporins along with, if at all there is any suspicious of any abscess formation, then we go for metronidazole, clindamycin or aminoglycoside, aztreonam or fluoroquinolone. So main colorectal surgeries, that is obstructed small intestine. Again, fourth generation cephalosporins or third generation ceftriaxone plus metronidazole, ertapenem, cefoxitin, cefoteton, ampicillin, sulbactam combination. Same here also clindamycin, aminoglycoside or fluoroquinolones is one combination. Other combination is same metronidazole, aminoglycoside or fluoroquinolones. Coming to head and neck, clean contaminated wounds of a head and neck. Same cephalosporins, but metronidazole, ampicillin or sulbactam. So only the penicillin allergic patients will give only the clindamycin. So neurosurgical, same cefazolin and clindamycin and vancomycin. Orthopedic surgery, cefazolin, ceftriaxone, clindamycin and vancomycin. Whereas breast and hernia, only cefazolin, clindamycin. Usually in practice, breast are all these are the clean wounds. So we will prescribe only the cephalosporins. No need of vancomycin, all those things. If at all he is a penicillin allergic, we'll go for clindamycin, or we can go for broad spectrum antibiotics also. So this is the table where we'll compare the infection rate with each procedure, that is classification of wounds, whether with prophylaxis, infection rate without prophylaxis. So coming to the first, clean class 1. So infection rate with prophylaxis also 1 to 2%, and with prophylaxis also, without prophylaxis also only 1 to 2, that is same. So in clean wounds, if you give the antibiotic prophylaxis, if you won't give the prophylaxis, the same infection rate is 1 to 2 only. So it doesn't change. So whereas class 2, that is clean, contaminated, viscous, opened and with minimal spillage. The infection rate with prophylaxis is 3, but without prophylaxis is 6 to 9%. So contaminated, open, viscous with spillage and also inflammatory diseases. It is 6, where it is without prophylaxis is very high, 13 to 20%. Whereas 30, that is purulent pus or perforation or incision through an abscess. All this comes under 30 wounds. So here the infection rate with prophylaxis is only 7%, whereas without prophylaxis it is too high, that is 40%. So during the operation, the following steps have a positive impact and outcome. So what are these steps? First one is careful handling of the tissues. Second one is meticulous dissection and hemostasis and debridement of the devitalized tissues. Whereas compulsive control of all intraluminal contents and preservation of blood supply of the operated organs and elimination of any foreign body from the wound. So if you follow these steps, then the outcome of the patient will be good, and there will be decreased surgical site infections. So other one is the maintenance of the strict aseptic conditions by the operating team, that is no holes in the gloves, avoidance of the use of contaminated instruments, avoidance of environmental contamination such as the debris falling from overhead. So thorough drainage and irrigation with warm saline of any pockets of purulent collection in the wound. So ensuring that the patient is kept in a euthermic state, is well monitored and is fluid resuscitated. So expressing a decision about closing the skin or packing the wound at the end of the procedure. So because in diabetic patients you should control the blood glucose should be less than 200 milligrams per deciliter in all patients during surgery. So hypothermia, if at all all these conditions, you should first control these conditions. So hypothermia, any hypoxia during surgery are associated with a higher rate of surgical site infections. So what are the risk factors for post-operative wound infection? So come from the patient factors. So any conditions with increased raised intra-abdominal pressures like ascites, any chronic inflammatory diseases, any malnutrition, inadequate antibiotics, and obesity. So immunosuppressive conditions like diabetes, extremes of age, younger age and old age, hypercholesterolemia, hypoxemia, peripheral vascular diseases, and anemia. Any previous site of radiation exposure or recent surgery, any skin carriage of staphylococci, skin diseases in area of the infection or infected skin diseases, and immunosuppression that are in chemotherapy or steroidal therapy. So what are the environmental factors? So environmental factors are contaminated medications, inadequate disinfection or sterilization, inadequate skin antisepsis, inadequate ventilation, and presence of foreign body. So what are the treatment factors? So drains, then emergency procedures, inadequate antibiotic coverage, so preoperative hospitalization. So in case of drains, so if you daily will do the dressing, so like that in drain, surrounding the drain also you should apply the antiseptic lotion. You should clean with poran iodine, and you should compulsorily change the dressing material around the drains also along with the main wound. So in emergency procedures, we cannot follow all these things, no. So because it is an emergency procedure, just we will go to the, so we won't have that much time. So we cannot follow all these steps. So there is a more chance of post-operative infections. Then pre-operative, more long duration of hospitalization. Then prolonged surgical time for operation. All these are the treatment factors. So surgical site infections most commonly occur 5 to 6 days post-operatively, but may occur it can occur early or it can occur later, but the average period is 5 to 6 days of surgery. So approximately 80 to 90% of all post-operative infections occur within 30 days after the operative procedure, and there will be increased use of outpatient surgery and decreased length of stay in hospitals. So 30 to 40% of all wound infections have been shown to occur after hospital discharge. So in all clean wound cases, that is inguinal hernia or any elective cases, so you should uh, as early as possible you should discharge the patient, otherwise there is a more chances of getting hospital acquired infections and surgical site infections. So wound infections, they will take 7 to 10 days to develop, and even cellulitis around the wounds caused by invasive organisms like beta hemolytic streptococcus. So it will take 3 to 4 days to develop. So if an infected wound is under tension or there is clear evidence of suppuration or infection, then sutures or clips need to be removed with curettage if necessary to allow the pus to drain adequately. That is the important thing. If because you did the surgery and you advise the patient for follow-up for next week, so they will come to you for follow-up, then you should inspect the wound. So all those things. So if at all you have doubt that there is at one point there is a pus collection, then you should remove that suture area. Otherwise they go on keeping collecting and they will lead to the wound dehiscence. So in case of an abscess, they have the skin of delayed primary. So in case of abscess case, you should open the abscess cavity and you should drain the all collected purulent discharge, and you should open the wound. You should keep the wound open. You should not suture the wound in case of any abscess. Even small benign lesions like what is that one? Sebaceous cyst. Because for long standing sebaceous cyst, they will get the secondary bacterial infection and they will form into an abscess. So in those small swellings also, you should take out the all the pus and the capsule. Then you should thoroughly wash with the povidone iodine, hydrogen peroxide and warm saline. Then you should keep the wound open. You should not suture. So delayed primary or secondary closure can be undertaken when the wound is clean and granulated. So that is the important. So some heavily infected wounds may be left to heal by secondary intention, where those conditions with no attempt at the closure, particularly where there is a loss of skin cover and healthy granulation tissue develops. Especially these type of secondary intention healing will occur in most of the laparotomy cases, because in emergency conditions like any obstruction or any perforation, old age, any associated risk factors patient. So those, there won't be good amount of healing for those patients. So again there will be wound dehiscence and wound gapping. So in those patients, if you leave the wound open, daily dressings and antibiotic coverage, then by supplementation, multivitamin supplementation, vitamin C for healing purpose, so all those with supplements, the wound heals itself with a secondary intention. So end result may be excessive scarring will be there, that can always be revised with plastic surgery under clean surgical conditions at a later stage, because we don't have any second option. So because in laparotomy, if there is a wound gaping, then the margins won't get that much closer without any tension. So you should leave and they should heal by secondary intention, and later on there will be a more fibrous tissue over the scar. So the scarring will be excessive. So for that we have to, in later time, we have to go for plastic surgery procedures. Thank you.